we're going to continue this conversation. I'll segue it to LIV here in a second, but I believe we have the video from Rory's presser earlier, kind of connecting the dots here. Josh, run that if we have that, please.
How much of that would you say can be attributed to the emergence of LIV Golf and the acrimonious clash that's playing out in California court right now?
A lot of it. Look, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I mean, I think the emergence of LIV or the emergence of a competitor to the PGA Tour has benefited everyone that plays elite professional golf. I think, it's, when you've been the biggest golf league in the biggest market in the world for the last 60 years, there's not a lot of incentive to innovate. And this has caused a ton of innovation at the PGA Tour. And what was quite I'd say an antiquated system is being revamped to try to, mirror where we're at in the world in the 21st century with, the media landscape and just the PGA Tour isn't just competing with LIV Golf or other sports. It's competing with Instagram and TikTok and everything else that's trying to take eyeballs away from the PGA Tour as a product. So, is what, LIV coming along, it's definitely had a massive impact on the game, but I think everyone as a professional golfer is going to benefit from it going forward.
I don't want to be much of a conspiracy theorist, but that same reporter asked every single person that same question, trying to get that soundbite, trying to get that like LIV Golf has benefited everybody's soundbite. Mark, I'll throw this over to you. I have always been in the camp of the only people who lose in the current state of golf are the fans. I think the players are doing great. The LIV guys are doing good. The sponsors, the tour, everybody's good. I think the fans are the only losers here. So yeah, I think Rory's right and has been right. We kind of knew this.
Once again, he takes a stand and speaks up, and his voice holds a lot of gravitas. And kudos to that reporter who's obviously got something to write for one or other publication, and she's looking for her angle, and so she got it, and she got it from the biggest fish in the fishbowl here on the PGA Tour, Tiger's side, obviously, and as far as Rory went, I didn't see the whole press conference, but we had him on the range prior to it, and he looked very light. The practice went pure. He was cracking jokes with Shane Lowry and company out there, and just seemed to be having a good time. And all of a sudden, the little bit that I saw when he got in the press room there, typically you can ask Kyle. He's sort of smiley and easygoing, and he'll snap to attention when you ask him something really, really incisive. But it looked to me like there was a bit of an edge to him. And the answer that he gave there was accurate. It was contrite. I'm not contrite, pardon me, forthright, I should say, and impressive. And I also found it curious, and I'd love your take again, because I didn't see all that stuff. We were on the air. The commissioner was in just before him, or was it after? After. And so Rory's saying that sort of stuff, then the commissioner comes afterwards. So it is curious. It's curious that came out at the Players' Championship, but it's truth. And once again, he spoke the truth.
KP, I'll turn this over to you, but there was also another, it was not in a press conference. It was with Todd Lewis. I don't know if you saw this clip. I think it was before his presser. Todd Lewis asked him and said, are the players on the tour, are they unified in the changes in next year? And Rory, for maybe the first time I've ever seen, was literally speechless. He paused for, I don't think I'm exaggerating, 10 full seconds, which is a really long time before crafting his response to that question.
And he said no, right?
He said, I don't, he said, yeah, he basically alluded to, no, they're not. But at the end of the day, it comes down to shooting the scores.
which is great. Somebody, I think it was Sean Zock, said that should be the new PGA Tour. Instead of these guys are good, it should be shoot the scores. Yeah, like regarding the LIV thing with Rory, somebody pointed this out to me on Twitter. It was a follower, and I thought it was a really good point. It's like LIV is great for professional golfers, and like people that are like, oh, you should thank Phil. Like you should send him a Christmas card. It's like, what do you like? What do you want? What do you want out of that? What are you trying to get at? and I think so this person was pointing out LIV is great for professional golfers. It's not great for professional golf, right? And that's what you're sort of saying, Rick, is like, sure, like short term, more money, top players get more. Congratulations. And Rory doesn't. I think in all of this, people are like, oh, well, it's just, you know, more money. And it's like, what does Rory, does he even notice like the more money that he's getting? Like, what is that even? I just don't know what that even means. And I think that it's just like, people are like, oh, see, LIV did all this. And it's like, you know what else LIV did? It made it really hard for over the next 20 years for the sport to stay in a position where it's going to continue to improve and have more money funneled in, especially as LIV starts to take away potentially some of the sponsorships over the next 5 or 10 years. So that's also what LIV did, if we want to talk about that. It's just it's so short-sighted to say like, oh, LIV did all this. LIV is the reason the PGA Tour is thriving. Like, for sure, it's the reason the Players Championship winner gets 6 million this year, 4.4 million. But it's also like there's some long-term effects that we're not going to see for a while that are not great.
Yeah, my point, Patrick, and the fans losing is we've got our stars split, and in sport, monopoly is generally pretty good. Probably the only place you want a monopoly. And also when you raise these, but like, how do you think they're going to pay for these persons? It's not going to be with less commercials. I'll tell you that for free. So I just think and yes, we're going to get elevated events. We're going to get, which have worked out great. We're going to get awesome Netflix docuseries about the drama and stuff like that. And we're going to feel like 10% of the NBA and the drama that league has. That's going to be cool for fans. But like, everybody else wins. Fans kind of, I think, lose out a bit.
Well, fans also kind of win because we got 9 minutes of extra coverage of golf shots as well. So we're on the right trajectory there. But I think the one point about Rory's quote is he didn't say professional golfers are winning. He's saying elite professional golfers are winning.
Yeah, but did he mean like the top 20 in the world, or did he mean elite as in like PGA Tour players? Because I
should have asked the follow-up. I don't know.
It could apply to either one, right? Like if like elite professional golf compared to me is just PGA Tour players, but compared to the other tours, it's like just 20 guys.
Well, I wouldn't agree that it's all PGA Tour players, because I do think, in a sense, some of these mid-tier guys, and I touched on it on Sunday, they're going to feel like they got the short end of the stick with this new schedule.
Why? In what way?
So it's top 30 OWGR, top 50 FedEx Cup, right? For these 8 designated events. And there's a report out there that these 8 events are going to get 700 points compared to the 500 from the regular events. And
did that come out today?
I believe Rex Hogger tweeted about it. It's not official, but
I don't like those numbers. That's not good.
So you have this this boys club essentially, where you're playing with less competition for more points, and the OWGR says the bigger field, most times it's tougher to win. So you have to get into these designated events through tougher fields. Technically, big fields, 144 people, 3-week stretch. You got to play your butt off. Then you got to play 2 more in a row. So you're forced to go 5 weeks straight if you want to get into these designated events. And I just don't think long-term cutting off the talent pool is a good move into these events, because you do give some momentum to LIV. You throw them a life raft. You give them some potential guys who might feel scorned, and they might jump ship for a league that has struggled to sign people, which they've come out and admitted.
Rick, go ahead.
My one point is this: under this new system, does Max Homa ever happen? I don't think he does. I don't think he gets into the 2019 Wells Fargo Championship, because that would have been a designated event. And his lead up to the Genesis Invitational, T18, T42, T7, is that enough to get into the top 3 of the FedEx Cup during that stretch to win what was arguably a top 5 story over the last 5 years on the PGA Tour? I don't know. And so I think they're kind of cutting themselves off from those potential stories.
It's a great point. I think I disagree with The Homa point is really good, and that was a little bit of the Fowler point I was making last week of it's actually really. I was using Fowler in the same sort of scenario, but pointing out how it's actually really interesting that he would fall out of some of these events, although he has the life raft of a sponsor exemption, which I think is garbage. Like, make the Tiger exemption, get rid of the sponsor exemption. Don't need that. But I think it's really interesting for guys to like fall out and then have to play their way back in. Now, go ahead, Rick.
So tangibly speaking, so let's put a name to this. So the guys who are right outside the top 30 of the OWGR and right outside the top 20 of the FedEx Cup points would be your biggest losers. Is that an accurate statement? Because they'd be just on the outside looking in.
Outside the top 50 of the FedEx Cup?
50 FedEx.
Oh, 50 FedEx. Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah.
So, okay. Then those names get a little bit different. So I originally thought it was going to be Tom Hoagie, but it's actually like Tyson Alexander.
Right.
What is Tyson Alexander? What's Harris English? I brought him up on Sunday. I was just wondering.
Harris English is, let's see, he is currently
he jumped up after the big finish last week.
29th in the FedEx Cup standings.
Damn. Okay. Good for him.
So 51, it's Alexander, S.H. Kim, Garrick Higo, Kevin Yu, Sam Ryder, Wyndham Clark, right outside the top 30 of the official World Golf Rankings. Sepp Straka, Ryan Fox, Tom Hoagie, Chris Kirk, Adam Scott.
I mean, yeah.
I thought it was different.
Kirk,
I think what's
a top 20 player.
I think what's he is. I think what's interesting is, Rory was talking today about how at the Delaware delegation they were basically closing this off even more, and the tour executives. By the way, Rory saying tour, PGA Tour just kills me every time. But
forgiveness.
Yeah, God. The tour executives are like, hey, we can't make this churn so we can't make the percentage of churn so low, which I think to their credit and to the top players' credit, they opened it up more to where I guess I just don't, and we talked about this on Sunday, Rick, I don't really see what the James Hahns of the world are so angry about. Like, what is James Hahn and people like him, what are they so upset about?
Realistically, I've been critical of James Hahn. James Hahn is a human, and we all have flaws. I think James Hahn sees himself getting passed up, and I think James Hahn realizes that he can't compete, and now it's going to be even more difficult for him to compete. I actually think James Hahn's reaction is somewhat natural, even if I don't agree with it, and I understand the business side of it. I think it's a guy who's played professional golf his entire life, and he sees himself already getting phased out, and he believes the changes are going to expedite him being phased out. And I think it is human, and I think it is natural when you've dedicated your life to something like that. And I've been critical of him, but I think he is just human.
Yeah, I think it's the path to these designated events for him. Like it's going to be tough. You got to play your butt off for 3 weeks straight if you're outside the top 50 or top 30, like we said. And then you got to go 5 weeks straight if you want to play in both of them.
Yeah, but I think to go back to the reason for all of this, to have the stars playing together in the same events, like this is sort of, I mean, you could argue field size, and I would argue field size needs to be bigger, but this was like, I mean, Monahan gave the stat. It was like in non-majors, only 40% of the time did the top 30 player. What was the stat there, Rick? Did you see this?
No, I didn't see it.
It was like top 30 players play against each other 95% of the time in majors, but only 40% of the time in non-majors. I don't know the exact wording there. Essentially, though, it like the tour is so diluted in terms of having 700 events every year that they had to create they had to incentivize top players to play the exact same events. And this was the way to do it. Do I think they should open it up and have 100 player fields with a cut? Absolutely. But is this better than the alternative? I think it probably is, even though I would argue it's not perfect, Patrick.
Here's the quote. I'll have to read this whole thing. This is what the fans. This is from Jay Monahan's presser. This is what fans want, and this is what fans have been asking for. Here's a data point, which I love Jay Monahan saying. Here is a data point. I love that.
He had so many talking points. It was incredible.
Consider the last 5 years on the PGA Tour. What percentage of top 10, top 20, top 30 players in the world compete on average against one another at a major championship? The answer, more than 95%. What about those same top players competing together at the remaining PGA Tour events? Answer, less than 40%. Let me repeat that. Less than 40%. End quote.
Man, sounds like a guy who used to work for Fenway Group. My thing, oh, he did. My thing is, shout out LeBron. Is this, well, do you think 2024 is better than what we have currently? Like what was the need for change? You do think it's better? Yeah,
I think it'll be the only thing I don't like is the potential no cut events. I think the rest of it's pretty much a big win.
Why is it better?
Well, it's you're gonna have these stretches of really important golf in the non-elevated events, and then you're gonna have the elevated events.
That's what we have right now, though, right?
Yeah. But you're also
I guess the argument is you sort of can't necessarily play your way, or we don't know how you get into the events right now. It's more convoluted right now.
That is true.
I would argue that this year's pretty good so far. Now it remains to be seen. The Wells Fargos, the RBC Heritages, kind of the Travelers, those kinds of events, whether they pop as much as the first 2 months of the season have. But I think you'd be hard pressed to get a better first couple of months than you've gotten so far this year, especially the no cut thing. I think that's kind of a big deal.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Like I don't like that at all.
Them coming out with the stats, you knew they're like, all right, we're going to get peppered on this one. They came out wrote the Arnie wins on their hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when you know it's a big deal.
Mark, you're tapped into. I always felt like the cuts thing was a point of pride out on tour, right? I mean, what's the temperature like for these players not having cuts?
I'd be lying if I told you what the players think, because I haven't asked a lot of them about this since this news was released. But just me personally, I'm disappointed, desperately disappointed that the cut's been removed. Because remember, everyone that was complaining about this stuff, they were the same folks complaining about the WGCs. And what we've ostensibly got now is a few WGC events happening again, just with a different name. And they're not as global. They're a PGA Tour thing, and they don't have the other tours involved. So from my point of view, I would love to see a limited field with a cut. Even if you cut just 20 people out of a 70-person field, or maybe 40 people out of a 100-person field. And then also to take it further, because the WGCs, what they did, and I was in many a conversation on a driving range because I was teaching full-time then with the Stuart Applebys of the world and these guys that play all over the show, that they like the WGCs perpetuate themselves because of the world ranking points that are guaranteed in there. So if you get in there and you're inside the top 64, you're almost guaranteed for a while. And to play your way in, you've got to do something borderline miraculous. And to play your way out, you've got to be very bad for 2 years or beyond. And so this has happened before. And so that's where I think a lot of the blowback came from. But along those lines, I would love to see a cut. And I would also love to see that in those elevated events, that you only give FedEx Cup points to the top 30. Because otherwise you're going to have these things perpetuating themselves, because I can go in there, play crappy for the week, earn FedEx Cup points. Whereas if I go to one of the other events with a cut where there's probably less points on offer, then I miss the cut, then I'm really seeing red. So, whereas I was critical, like you, well said, of James Hahn, again, the tour have protected some of them, but to a large extent, the rich are getting what they're getting their cake, and they're getting to eat it because of the fact that everyone wants to see them play together. That's kind of my take.